Illinois faces some big challenges. Today, you're about to hear a truly honest analysis of the problems we face. Equally important, you'll also hear an in-depth discussion of some practical solutions. This is your radio source for stories, the insight, and the answers you won't hear anywhere else, not in the media, and not coming from Springfield. You're listening to Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Opportunity Project. Now, here's your host, AM 560's Dan Proft.
Welcome to another edition of Illinois Rising. I'm Dan Proft, co-host of Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, weekdays 5 to 9 a.m. with Amy Jacobson. And joining me as a co-host on this edition is Brian Timpone, who's the founder of a company called Local Labs that does news content, particularly in one of the spaces, newsifying data. And that's what we're trying to do when it comes to discussions of pension issues in Illinois, particularly in the wake of a topic we touched upon last week, which was the city of Harvey being yet another canary in the collapsing coal mine that is the state of Illinois, with the announcement that Harvey is planning to lay off half of its police and fire because they can't make the required pension payments and also continue to pay day-to-day expenses, particularly as the state is garnishing the revenues the city is supposed to receive in order to pay down a judgment against the city for not providing the requisite funding for the pensions. So this is the proverbial death spiral, but it's not unique to Harvey. Our friend Ted Dabrowski over at Wirepoints.com has looked at police and fire pension funds throughout the state of Illinois, and he finds nearly two-thirds of Illinois public safety pension funds were shorted their full payments in 2016, and many are trending towards capsizing the same way that Harvey's pension funds, police and fire pension funds are, the same way the city of Chicago police and pension funds are. And Brian, this should come as no surprise. There's been a lot of people, ourselves included, who've been just looking at the numbers and looking at the actuarial tables and saying what you're generating in terms of return at the benefit levels you're guaranteeing is not sustainable, and Harvey's perhaps the most public example of this to date.
Well, let's be clear. Every municipality in the state is insolvent. If they were treated like a regular business or your own personal situation, you would be forced into bankruptcy. The only reason they get a reprieve is because these pension systems don't have to fund themselves, so they pay as they go. And in Harvey's case, because they don't have a money printing machine, they ran out of cash, and they can't pay the bill. And
the reason they ran out of cash, for example, is 42 retired Harvey firefighters have been paid out nearly $25 million in pension benefits. Those same 42 firefighters contributed during their time on the fire department, contributed $1.14 million to the retirement fund. So they collectively put in $1.14 million. They collectively have been paid out to date, right? $25 million. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about unsustainable benefit levels. And for more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Ted Dabrowski from Wirepoints.com. Ted, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
So the conversation in the kind of Chicago press corps, as myopic and lowbrow as it is, since this crisis in Harvey bubbled to the surface, has been about whether or not they should receive the funds that they should receive taxpayer funds that are rightly due the city of Harvey from the state, or have those funds intercepted by the comptroller's office and garnished to pay down this judgment against them for underfunding their pensions. But the point is, looking at the math and looking at your research, I mean, even if all those funds the state has were released to the city of Harvey, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't change the fundamental dynamic that Harvey is facing. They can't make the numbers work to have the police and fire departments they currently have and then also meet their retirement obligations to retired city workers.
No, they can't. And as Brian said, this is the same situation virtually everywhere. If you were to take the money and put it into pensions as for what the cities owe, whether it's Harvey or Chicago or Kankakee. If you were to do that, immediately they'd be firing policemen, firemen. They'd be trying to raise taxes. They would try to do anything they could to fix it, but the problem is it's not fixable anymore. The key point is that the benefit levels have grown so much. They've never stopped growing, regardless of whether people could afford it or not. And now, it's impossible to pay down. And I think that's the whole thing about this garnishment, this intercept, is that it revealed. I don't think that the political machine wanted this to happen, but it reveals that there's so many cities that are bankrupt. Maybe not legally, but they're effectively bankrupt.
So, Ted, you've done a lot of this research as of late, and we've dug into it at LGIS. And I always ask myself this question. I'm not an actuary. I was a journalist, or am a journalist, and I don't have any particular special knowledge of pension funds. But I look at the data; it's right there. It's online. You can pull it down from the Department of Insurance. It's pretty obvious what we're seeing. To what do you attribute the fact that nobody in the other media, the traditional media, prevailing media, and nobody in Springfield has ever actually tried to do these analyses themselves? I mean, why does it fall to us to do this when the information's really readily available? Well,
this is really destroying the narrative they've had for a long time that we just need tax hikes to fix things and that everything's okay, and if people just pay their fair share and those kind of things. This is way beyond that. And the newspapers, whether it be Cranes or civic committees and civic federations and groups like that, their whole narrative has been that, there's no real problem. We just need to put more money in it, and taxpayers need to pay up. But what this is showing is that there's just not enough money to go around, and it's particularly the case. And maybe people don't care. Maybe they've given up on places like Harvey. Harvey well. When you go down to Harvey, you see what the situation in the housing market is. It's really sad. There is no money there. There's no money left there. There's no way they can tax more. They have no assets to sell. They can't raise money through the bond market. They're broke, and they might be at the extreme end of the case of what's in Illinois, but everybody's in some point right behind them.
And I want to go back to research that Wirepoints has done. We've discussed previously, but to infuse it into this conversation, which is benefit levels. How benefit levels have grown because the response you get from the big government kind of defined benefit plan proponents is, hey, well, if the city or the state, the unit of government had just paid their fair, that paid as they should the entire way, then we wouldn't have a problem. If this is all on the government management side. It's not a function of unsustainable benefit levels, and you've done research that suggests that's not the case.
Well, it's otherwise. If you actually look at the research, and taxpayers know it, they've been putting money in right and left. You can look at the property taxes, you can look at the income tax hikes that we've had. People have put in their money, and I think it's kind of an insult and an attempt to guilt people into paying more by saying the taxpayers haven't done their share. It's really, I think, an unfair thing the politicians and the unions are doing. When you really look at the facts, pension benefits, what's been doled out over the last 30 years, has far outpaced people's incomes, state tax revenues, the economy. It just far outpaces it. We're talking about nearly 10 times inflation growth rates for what we've handed out in benefits. And it's the same thing in places like Harvey. It's the same thing in the public safety pension funds. Just in the last 30 years, they've grown. Pension benefits have grown roughly 7 times more than inflation. You can't hand out benefits like that and then expect to be solvent.
And just to put this in a human form, one example: this guy Steve Serzicki. I'm just pulling him out. He's a Harvey firefighter. Worked 30 years for the Harvey Fire Department before retiring in 2013 at the age of 53. He moved to Henderson, Nevada, outside Vegas. Paid $321,000 for a 4-bedroom on a cul-de-sac, block from the 12th hole at Chimera Golf Club. He had paid $321,000. The median home sale price in Harvey last year was $22,000. Serzicki contributed $123,000 to his pension fund during his time on the job. After 5 years of retirement, he already had collected more than twice that, $303,000. Over a 30-year projected retirement, he'll get $3.62 million back on the $123,000 he put in, and from a community, working in a community for 30 years where the median home price at the market value current is $22,000. I mean, there's just something so fundamentally immoral about this, and it doesn't seem like people are fully woke, to borrow a term from the left, about it.
No, people don't care, and that story you just told, it's the same story in every community. When I give you the big numbers, that's just the addition of a whole bunch of individuals who and again, it's not the fault of the fire guy for getting his big pension. It's what the politicians have doled out, and they've made promises after promises, and the people who are getting those pensions, like you said, they're going to get pensions that are worth $1 to $2 to $3 million in their retirement, and the people who are paying those now, the people in Harvey, they're the ones with a $21,000 income. Their houses are worth maybe $25,000, and the prospects are horrible. So it's really become an immoral, unfair system, and I was just saying that the politicians should be shamed for this because they're allowing it to happen. They're perpetuating it. They're not doing anything about it. And, nobody's down there to defend the people of Harvey.
He is Ted Dabrowski from Wirepoints.com. You want to check out his research on Harvey and pension funds generally, as well as a range of other economic topics. Wirepoints.com is the website. Ted Dabrowski, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.